So you have cordium and a silo. This is where situational conditions determine what you should build next. However, in most situations, a repair module is usually a good idea. Repair modules, like all structures, take a few moments to construct, and when completed, if they are supplied with cordium from a silo, there will be a small delay before they inevitably turn on. Like other modules, the repair module has a little symbol that appears above it when active, in this case, a wrench. Some structures, like silos and walls, become virtually indestructible if being repaired by a repair module, but this is not true for all structures. Damage is one area that has changed numerous times with updates, so I will not be covering that subject in detail. Repair modules are the second most critical part of a base. Repair modules will take damage over time and require occasional checkups to keep them going. Repair modules cannot be placed close enough to repair each other. They are also a popular target for infiltrators, as taking them down renders anything no longer covered by it destructible by firepower. This means critical things like walls or towers that don't normally go down can be fairly quickly taken out and thus open wide your base to attack. It is a rule of thumb that it is better to have too many modules than not enough. However, a proper placement of modules and balance of modules is also important, as there are also some types of modules that cannot be placed within certain distance of each other. Therefore, careful planning and possible alterations are necessary to ensure proper coverage of your base by modules. Next up, barricade walls. These are available by default. If you haven't already noticed, certain structure types have a number associated with them in their description, right here. This tells you how many of this specific structure you can place. In the case of walls, you can place up to 3. And no, you cannot place 3 normal walls and 3 fiberluminescent walls. It's either or. Side note, please take note of where you are placing walls. People all too often will place walls in ways that completely close off all access to a base, and thus create very irritating problems. People will even do stupid things like build walls in front of gates. Seriously. You will note that the green dots on walls are all clustered together and high on the wall. Because of this, placement of the walls is quite versatile, provided there isn't any of that terrain type most typically found in a mountain, which you cannot build on or come in contact with. Otherwise, then you should be able to place quite a lot of a wall structure into the ground or cliffs. Walls can be placed to come in contact or very near contact with each other at multiple points, and at multiple angles so that a person cannot walk between or jump over them. They can also touch a number of other structures. Turrets and towers. There is frequently misunderstandings around these two very different structure types. One has guns on it, the other is just a tower/bunker for infantry. When someone says they want an infantry turret or an infantry tower, pay attention. Know which one is being discussed. All too often, I will ask for one and get another. Likewise, make sure if you are asking someone else for one, that they understand which you are referring to. Turrets should not be constructed at this time except in dire need. Why? That too is for later discussion. As for turret placement, however, they are generally quite high out of the ground, except the one short turret, anti-vehicle turret. There is some flexibility, however, and if you are building on a hillside, you can often bury them to some extent. But the door must be above ground, And if you're smart and able, you'll place the door facing towards the safest direction, keeping in mind that when you get a turret, it is automatically pointed front. So it's typically best to place turrets so that they face the direction they are meant to defend against. This way, if you or another hops into the turret, you don't have to spin the turret around to face the attack. You can begin firing sooner, and there's less confusion about which way you're facing. Again, this structure type you can leave open to faction-wide access, lock it to platoon, squad, or just yourself. It's typically best to lock turrets that have AI modules powering them, especially for anti-infantry turrets. This is because some people will AFK in a turret feeling safe there. You cannot kick them out or change access to the turret while they are in it. And when the enemy is close, the artificial intelligence will typically be more devastating to an enemy in or around a base than actual players. At range, however, they do not shoot targets, but people can. Basically, turret access pros and cons should be weighed at every base, and you may need to change access depending on conditions. For example, an enemy vehicle may be parked behind one of your walls. However, a person unlike the AI, can shoot through structures' windows to hit the vehicle on the other side. Last thing I will mention is that a vast majority of players are terrible at placement of turrets. They place them at the worst possible time and in the worst possible locations. It's almost as if they want to ruin the base. More on this when we get to discussing tactical theory of base building. Towers. You currently have two types. One that is 3 flights of stairs tall with a sky roof door that is the infantry tower. The other is shorter and called a pillbox. It can be placed low into the ground like a real pillbox. However, it can be placed moderately high and is actually quite large. So I personally tend to refer to it as a short tower or small bunker. The infantry tower, the taller one, has a number of great tactical uses, and if placed high enough, you can get walls close enough to touching it that people cannot walk between. But this is difficult, and the ease of such placement has changed with updates. With both towers, it is quite useful if you place them low enough in the ground that you can place modules within them. Again, however, I will remind you that you can at times place structures within structures. However, you cannot place a structure to encompass an already existing structure. This means if your tower goes down and you want to rebuild it, you will have to deconstruct any structures that were in it, and likely any structures it was touching, unless you're insanely lucky. There is access to the roof, however you will need a jetpack to get up through the window in the ceiling. There is a good platform on that roof. Pillboxes. They are a superb place to put your spawn tubes, and can have room for 2 or 3 modules more in what is a very secure structure. If you really want to, you could even place a spawn tube directly in the door blocking access. However, it's probably not the best idea. Also, with proper placement, you can use a Sunday as a sort of ladder to get up onto the roof of this structure, even for max suits. I will conclude the towers and walls section by adding that proper placement of towers and walls is also an area of frequent critical errors that greatly impact base security. All too often, people are too eager to place buildings that they rush, make poor choices, and rush off to build more stuff. A huge, hastily and large team build, poorly planned base is often weaker than a well thought out, slowly built one-player base. As in, one person builds everything. I have often built dangerously strong bases, all by myself. A notable one of which is called Fort Check, and will be discussed later in the fortified bases section. Structural shield modules give windows, doors, and gates their shields. They are sensitive to proximity of some modules, like the Sky Shield module. It is typically a good idea to get them up moderately quickly because players will often shoot at your base through windows in walls, including snipers. Also, the defense of a base is much stronger if you can shoot at an enemy without exposing yourself to fire. However, you can receive some damage from shots fired at you while behind the structural shield. Gate shields are a different matter. They stop large firepower and vehicles, but small arms will still travel through the shield. Large firepower will still injure, though greatly reduced, persons standing near the impact of a shield. AI modules. AI modules power turrets, including the ion cannon, or rather, glaive IPC, which will not fire without being powered. These are typically less critical structures, so place other modules first, unless you have immediate need for them. Skywall shield modules are a great and fairly critical part of most bases. Ion cannons being the only thing that can take them down, aside from substantial, constant firepower, or the destruction of the module itself. Skywall shields offer what is also a popular source of protection to friendly aircraft in need of shelter. A skywalled shield, if touched by an enemy, will burst them into flames and generally kill them. As such, it is a great deterrent for skydrops, enemy air, and if placed to collide with cliffs, it creates a pocket in which enemies will not typically venture into. Also, vehicles can drive on top of shields. However, with the right angle, you can break through the shield with ground vehicles. You can, and you might actually have to go fairly fast too. You cannot exit a vehicle that sits on top of a sky shield, except, I suppose, if you're kicked out. Also, sky shields are sensitive to placement, with proximity of another sky shield, that is. This means they cannot cover each other, but they can cover parts of the same area. Alarm modules are a nice luxury. They will let you know when an enemy is in the area, and all your teammates too. Spawn tubes. You can link to them and spawn in from any part of the map. They can offer allies a great way to quickly get across the map for a small cost of cordium. I think it's 10 cordium if I remember correctly, which is of great aid to bases of all types, especially when on the front lines. These have a large radius in which no other spawn tube can be constructed, so choose placement wisely.